Elon recently tweeted that after 10,000 miles driven on full self-driving beta, you will be able to turn off the autopilot nag starting in this month of January. Do you guys know what this means? It means that by October, we might actually get this update. So, because Elon's a very preoccupied guy and very busy and has missed full self-driving beta rollout timelines like no tomorrow, I don't think we should actually expect this update to roll out in January, but despite the fact that I have very little faith in this timeline, I'm still very, very excited for these kinds of updates because it's the first time, basically in years, that Tesla is actually willing to assume a little bit more liability. Now, I know that it doesn't mean that the car is responsible for itself if the car gets into a collision. Even on full self-driving, you are still responsible, you are still the owner, and full self-driving beta can make the wrong decision at the worst possible time. So, I'm sure Dan O'Dowd is absolutely crapping his pants and getting ready for a whole new marketing campaign based on this tweet alone, but I actually think these requirements should be a little bit more accessible because based on my discussions with like lawyers about how these types of things work, Tesla can get sued regardless of how the autopilot system checks to make sure you're paying attention. Basically, all that really happens by them unlocking certain vehicles no longer having to have the autopilot nag, which in case you weren't aware just means that you have to keep your hand on the wheel, and it's annoying because on Teslas it's not a capacitive wheel, which means you have to apply a certain amount of pressure to the steering wheel in order for it to continue autopilot without beeping at you. By getting rid of that nag, essentially it's just going to allow for more FUD or more attack pieces by Consumer Reports, but I do think by setting the bar incredibly high so that you have to use autopilot or full self-driving beta for very, very long extended periods of time, like getting 10,000 miles on FSD beta, that's honestly going to take people like many, many months on new vehicles because, again, full self-driving is tied to the car and your safety score is dictated by the car, not by your Tesla account. And most people are driving, you know, around 1,000 to 1,500 miles a month. So that could easily take over 6 months for most people to actually hit. And that's assuming you do all of your driving with full self-driving, right? That's not counting disengagements or bad weather where beta doesn't want to work. It's not counting construction zones where FSD beta is being uncomfortable, or when you have lots of people in the car that may feel uncomfortable with the car driving itself and accelerating and decelerating unnaturally. So I think for a lot of people it could take close to a year for them to actually reach 10,000 miles on full self-driving beta, but I think that's kind of the point. Like, if you've been using that software for that long, Elon and the Tesla team are basically trusting that, okay, you know what the limits of the software is, you know how capable it is, therefore requiring the nag is no longer super crucial. And I do personally think that the convenience factor and the enjoyability of autopilot would suddenly shoot way up if I didn't have to keep my hand exactly there. That's one of my biggest annoyances about the current state of autopilot because there's already an in-cabin camera and it already will start to beep at you if you look away from the road for too long. So it's already using eye tracking just like GM Super Cruise does. I don't know why they want to go the extra mile and also require the steering wheel thing. I guess just for redundancy and safety as a backup, but if I could just not have my hands on the wheel, I think that would make it feel a lot more like a self-driving experience. Like anytime I have friends or family in the car and I turn on autopilot, I try to tell them, see, the car is driving itself, and it's always the next question. They're like, yeah, but your hand is still there. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not actually steering. My hand is kind of just sitting there because it has to be. And that always makes people unimpressed by autopilot. They're always like, well, if your hand has to be there anyway, doesn't that kind of defeat the point of the car steering itself? Like, imagine if cruise control required your foot to be like physically touching the brake pedal or the accelerator at all times. That would kind of take away from the autonomous part of it. So I'm all in favor of Tesla moving completely to eye tracking, and if they want to restrict it to only after a certain number of miles you unlock purely eye tracking, that's fine, but I don't like the idea that this is restricted for my own personal reasons to just FSD beta users. Like, I would prefer it if after 10,000 miles on regular autopilot you could also turn off the nag if necessary and just rely on eye tracking. Maybe it's because the Model 3 and Y interior cameras don't have infrared capability, so in darker environments maybe the eye tracking wouldn't be enough, or if you're wearing sunglasses it couldn't tell where your eyes are looking. But again, the way Tesla's liability is currently assumed is no matter what happens, you are responsible, and I don't think that them them getting rid of the autopilot nag is them assuming more liability, which means that they could get sued before and they'll probably be able to get sued just as easily after. So you might as well just reward the people that are using the software properly. And of course, within those 10,000 miles, if you have a bunch of like forced autopilot disengagements, or there's a track record of you not paying attention or something, or getting locked into autopilot jail, maybe they can rope that into the safety score. Since FSD beta has gone into wide release, now they could say, all right, only people with a safety score over 90 can turn off autopilot nag or something like that. That way it doesn't roll out to absolutely everybody. I'm okay with there being high standards, but having to pay to turn off the nag, even if someone has used autopilot for tens of thousands of miles, like those people, they know how the system works. They know they need to be ready to take over, and they know that the eye tracking is a thing. So I guess it would be a pretty great convenience feature, and maybe Tesla is wise to realize that they could probably make a lot more money if they let you turn off the autopilot nag for a fee. But in my opinion, there needs to be some fundamental rewrites to the free version of autopilot to make it safer and behave more like FSD beta does. I'm not saying give it all the features, but it feels a little bit bizarre that you have to pay extra for autopilot to like stop at stoplights and stop signs. So you're telling me if I turn on autopilot and become incapacitated, whether it's from a heart attack or maybe I fall asleep at the wheel, if I don't pay for enhanced autopilot or full self-driving, then the car is just gonna shoot through red lights and shoot through stop signs. However, if I pay the extra fee, then it will come peacefully to a stop. Personally, I think that the stopping at stop signs and stoplights should be included in the free autopilot, but it won't continue on its own. But now that FSD beta is accessible to so many people, I feel like this means we should be at the point where you no longer have to press down on the gear stock or push on the accelerator pedal for it to continue once the light turns green or the stop lights are free, assuming you have full self-driving beta. If you don't have full self-driving beta, just let the car come to a stop for safety reasons, but then you have to confirm with the gear stock or pedal for it to continue. I'm not saying it has to do automatic lane changes, it doesn't have to navigate on autopilot, it doesn't need to handle roundabouts or turns, but I think we're getting close to that point of Tesla paywalling safety features in the event of emergencies, and I don't like the way that's going. So basically what I'm trying to say is with these updates, I hope they come up with a way for you to turn off the autopilot nag even if you don't want to pay the $200 a month or $15,000 upfront. The take rate of FSD is pretty low, so give us some free quality of life features, Tesla, please. Maybe in the next holiday update, especially for those of us who are having to pay $70,000 to get the 7-seat Model Y so we can qualify for the federal tax credit. Ugh. These are expensive cars, and it shouldn't be that hard to turn off. Let me know how you think Tesla should handle the rollout of hands-free self-driving. Do you think this is dangerous and they shouldn't allow it at all? Do you think the requirement is too high at 10,000 miles? All that stuff, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And thank you to everyone on Patreon supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.